Yeah. So I'm taking to my last few presentations to setting my timer, which is a bad sign if I start like that, right? You know, I'm a bit long-winded, but we'll. So I appreciate you having me here, and a little bit different presentation for me. A lot of times what I do is I talk directly to coaches, especially about implementation on the ice and what we're trying to do in our coaching education program. But in the first few years, this was the majority of our meetings, were administrators, directors, presidents, different boards throughout the United States as we launched this. One of the things that got lost in our launch was the fact that we launched the American development model as a model of high performance development, right? And that got lost in this battle for cross and half ice hockey, right? It became this battle about 6 and 8 year olds, and we lost what it was, which is high performance development. And what was tough for everybody to understand was that stuff that Dr. Norris talked about this morning, this multi-sport athleticism, age-appropriate training, all right? Cross-ice hockey and small area play at 6 and 8, that is high-performance development for kids that age. But what we had a hard time getting our head around is, oh my gosh, you mean we can have kids engaged, we can make it fun, they can be active, and we can help them with being more athletic or more functional in their movement throughout life, and that is high performance? That was a very difficult concept. So we keep having to come back to, it's not just about having fun and being engaged, and this is what is good for kids, but this is the stepping stone to the next phase of high performance development. We found in the United States this was a big problem. We were running the race to the wrong finish line, all right? Our associations, our coaches, especially our parents, they're worried about the number of games, they're worrying about meaningless games, worrying about meaningless tournaments and meaningless competitions. They're worried about all the wrong things at all the wrong ages. And as a result, we were struggling with our numbers and we were struggling with the development of high-level elite players, and something had to change. And that's when they started the American development model back in 2009. Now, my story is an interesting one because I've been with what you could consider maybe high-performance hockey, or at least hockey that my mortgage was dependent on, right? Division I college coaching, major, junior. My last job before I went to USA Hockey is I was the director of player development for the Edmonton Oilers. But I also had this 6-year-old. And I was traveling around with the Oilers, and I came back. He was actually, when USA Hockey contacted me, he was 6. When he first started hockey, he was 3. And I came back, and I was going to get to watch him play for the first time because I was overseas when my wife signed him up to play. And I walked into the rink, and here is my almost 4-year-old playing on full ice. And I'm standing in the stands, and I must have had this look of horror on my face because she comes up to me, she says, "What's wrong?" And I said, "They're going to play on full ice?" And she said, "Well, of course, what else is there?" So that was the idea. There was something wrong. I knew something was wrong. It didn't just look right. Then a couple of weeks later, I went into the locker room to tie his skates, and I was home, and the coach knew who I was because I coached the Spirit. He said, I was leaving afterwards, right after I tied his skates, I was going to leave, and the coach went up to the whiteboard. And as I was trying to sneak out, he was like, no, Bob, stay, this is great, yeah, I want you to hear this. I thought, all right, cool, this guy's really into it, he's going to talk to the young kids about what they're going to go do on the ice. And he drew a big box in front of the net, and he said to all these 6 and under players, "What's that?" And all the 6 and under players, including my son, said, "The no pass zone." It was all I could do not to get up and strangle him. okay? Because I'm coaching major junior players and we're trying to get them to understand where's the open ice and how do we make decisions and how do we solve these problems on the ice. And he's telling my soon-to-be 4-year-old he's not allowed to pass in this box in the zone. And then he goes on and tell the kids the most important thing in the D zone is to get the puck out so they don't score. So I had an inkling that I might have to get involved in youth hockey, okay? So we had some problems. And all these were throughout the United States. Right? What Steve talked about this morning, we're cutting kids, we're reducing the number of players at a young age, we're selecting too soon. These were all our problems and it had to change. In 2009, USA Hockey contacted me and 6 others and asked if we'd like to join this American development model. And I immediately said no. I liked my job. And Kenny Martell, who's a very good friend of mine, and we go back 25 years, he said to me, Bob, I want to send you this information because I respect your opinion. I'd like to know what you think. That's what he said to me. What he was doing is he was setting the hook, okay? Because I already told him no. And he sent me 70 pages of materials and I read it and I had that bad experience in youth hockey and I saw what was going on. So I gave it to my wife, who's a school teacher by trade, and I said, you need to read this and tell me what you think. So she read it, and a couple of weeks later, she came back to me and she said, so you guys don't do this now? And I said, no. And she said, well, you're all a bunch of idiots. that was the comment, right? So now all of a sudden I go from, right, being with the Edmonton Oilers, loving my job in the National Hockey League, to literally 2 months later, I am worried about 6 and 8-year-olds in their development. And I got to tell you, absolutely greatest change I ever made in my life. I am a huge believer, a huge proponent, and I'm passionate about what we should be doing for our kids. So that is the American development model. All right? That's what it is. It took us a long time to go around the world and look at best practices, look what's good for kids, study the sports science, find the educational principles, and say, all right, how is that going to play in Peoria? Now let's take all of that together, let's put it in and say, how can we make this work in the United States? And that is what the American development model is. It's based on long-term athlete development. And for me, that's one of the most concise definitions when I go around the country and say, what is it we're trying to do? Well, number one, we're trying to give youth sports back to the youth. Right? We want to make it about the participant. We want to make hockey about the child, not about you, and not about the coach, and not about the parent, about the child. And it's age-appropriate training. What's good for that child at that period in his life? It was interesting that Dr. Norris used the bicycle example this morning. I was smiling because I knew I had this video. There's Sam. Sam just turned 10 in this video. That was his old bike.
And stop. Okay, Sam, ride the white bike.
That's Sam's older sister bike. Can handle it. It's a little challenging, but it's about the right size for him. And he's having fun with it, way more fun than that little bike.
Hey, Sam, ride the purple bike.
Ouch. That was right before the neighbor called social services. Sam is one of our regional managers' son. And I love this video because, look, that's it. That's age appropriateness right there, right? And it also, we got to laugh at ourselves. When you see that, right, we wouldn't think about doing that to our child. Then you think about what we do in sport. And, it's kind of sad. So these are the stages USA Hockey came up with, which is long-term athlete development for hockey. Now, we didn't come up with these stages. We didn't invent this. This is all stuff that we got through the sports science of long-term athlete development, and then we focused it on the environment in the United States and how this would help. And the important thing we have to understand, and as you guys go forward with really launching this new direction in development starting at 6 and 8, and I know a lot of associations, especially up in Northern Ontario, are beyond where they are in Toronto, we have to remember that it's a ladder of development. It's a ladder of development. It's about doing what's right for the kids at 6 and under, so then we can do what's right for the kids when they're 8 and under, right? Active start to fundamentals. Then the fundamentals foundation of play for those kids, we want to build that. So when they are in this third stage, this learning to trade stage, this 12 and under peewees and 10 and under squirt, it's about skill and technical development. But we can't really do a good job in teaching them skill and technical development through that golden age of skill development, that stage of development, unless our coaches did a good job at 6 and 8. Because if they didn't, if we have our best coaches here teaching this age group and trying to deliver the right things to our kids, but those kids don't have the fundamentals, the foundation of what they need in order to learn that, those coaches have to go back and spend time doing the things that should have been done. And that's really where we get in trouble in terms of the developmental ladder. So it's not just important at 6 and 8, but we will see, and this is one of the biggest things that's happened over the last few years with us in the United States. It's the continuation of the development. It's making sure our coaches understand that we need them to deliver what's important to the child at that age. And we don't care if you want to be Mike Babcock. Because if you're coaching 10, we need you to be the best coach of 10-year-olds you can be. Not the best imitation of the coach of the Maple Leafs. And that's a big message we're constantly delivering in our coaching education programs. This chart, and you can see the chart about the rate of growth with PHV that Steve mentioned this morning. This chart goes through the windows of trainability that we base our program on in terms of what pathways are open for our athletes at that age. And what's really interesting about this, and Bob said something interesting, and we've kind of changed the way we approach this. All right, we want our coaches to focus on these windows of trainability, these periods of sensitivity during that child's growth and involvement in that level of hockey. But we also, we also want to make sure that we're delivering this programming based on these windows of trainability to the highest possible level. We used to say at all our coaching clinics, we used to actually start our coaching clinics. You go to anyone and they would start with saying, most of you won't coach an NHLer in your life. Probably the majority of you won't even coach a kid that plays Division I hockey. We don't do that anymore. We won't do it anymore. In fact, our message to our coaches is the American development model is about taking every boy and girl who joins USA Hockey and giving them the opportunity to fulfill his or her potential. We don't know what that potential is going to be. You might coach an NHLer. You might coach an Olympian. You might not at all. But that shouldn't stop us from delivering the best programming we can for each child. And we let them fulfill their own potential based on nature, based on nurture, based on development. All those things come in. But we no longer tell our coaches that that's what their job is. Their job is high performance development. In fact, we got in a lot of trouble when we launched the ADM because we said we want to train every child under the age of 12 the same way. And what our constituents heard was, oh my God, you're going to make everybody the same, give everybody medals, and no one's ever going to get good. That's not what we said. We said we had a responsibility to every child that they get trained at our highest possible level, that we make them as good as they can be. And that's a big difference. So our messaging, as we rolled it out, we ended up having to be very, very careful about how we rolled this out. Because people, and I'm sure a lot of you are going through this, I'm getting some head nods, are going through this. They want to hear what they want to hear. And then they lead you into arguments, so you counter that argument only to have them not listen to you and prepare the next argument, right? That's the reality of the situation. We stopped arguing with people. We actually stopped arguing with people. In fact, 90% of my job is going to places where people want to embrace what we do. I don't cold call anymore. And as a result, we have tremendous pockets of hockey happening in the United States. And we still have a few that won't embrace it. Now, we do have some rules where they're forced to do certain things, which helps. But I'm not running around the state of Michigan going to associations who are doing everything they... In fact, we have associations who spend more time trying to find ways not to do the right thing than they would if they just accepted what the right thing is and did it to the best of their ability, right? So really what we're doing now is we're not just preaching to the choir, but we're trying to make the choir the best they can be. And I'm going to share with you some numbers at the end of this presentation. So when you look at that, when you look at this last chart, and you look at this little highlighted area here of what's important to females and males at this development stage, and you see suppleness, and you see speed 1, which is quickness, and then you look at what the fundamentals of 8U hockey are, they very, very much reflect what's important to the child in that development age. All right, so we're looking at 6 and under, fun, engagement. And I like to use the word engagement because I'm so sick and tired of going to these meetings and having guys in the back, as soon as I say the word fun, go, oh yeah, there's a stupid guy from USA Hockey talking about fun. It can't be fun, this is hockey, right? We all know that's different, that's wrong. But really, fun sometimes makes people think of undisciplined environment. Kids on the ice doing whatever they want, not learning anything, not being directed in what's important, just, you know, I don't want to say unstructured because so much of unstructure is important, but it's not a program. So I try to use engagement, even though really it is fun. Because we heard this morning how important fun is to keep kids in the sport. But sometimes as we roll this out, we had to talk about the engagement of kids, which is fun, right? And the definition of fun really changes as kids get older. When you start coaching kids later on in a high performance model and they're right around puberty and older, fun becomes competition. Fun becomes that little small area game on the ice where it's me against you and you and I are best friends and I'm going to do everything I can to win this game. That's fun. So the definition of fun changes as the child gets older, just like the development model changes as the child gets older.
I mean, it's daunting. It's huge.
That's the main thing, it's the size is just too big.
I know, it's too big. When I stepped onto this ice surface, I kind of was looking down and trying to figure out where it started and stopped.
It's the view of what ice was like when we were kids. You know, this is what it was like, and you forget that when you get older.
Looking out at this as a kid, it would be overwhelming. Just wondering, you know, if you're going to get up and down the ice surface.
We thought this was for a completely different sport. It almost looked like a joke here, you know, you see the giant nets and everything. There's no way we're playing full ice on this.
Am I going to play on this?
No. big net. I mean, the goalie's like, he's standing up and it's above his head. I'm like, it was crazy.
There's so much room on the ice that you end up spending a lot of time in open space, and you're not touching the puck.
And we realized how bunched up we were, spread out, and use the ice, but then you weren't part of the play. You were so far out of it.
And a lot of chasing. It was just not much contact.
If your opposition wants, you're not going to get back in and you're done for the play. So, yeah, it's very unforgiving. If you're caught out of position in this thing, with a big sheet of ice, there's a lot of one-on-one type play. So if you can beat one guy, the other team's so far away they can't even catch you.
If you're a defenseman and you're beat, you're just gonna probably more or less tend to give up.
On the long passes, the passes are so long that they're easy to intercept.
It's hard to communicate because everybody's spread out so far. And you're out of breath, so it's hard too. I need more water. If people were minutes to breathe, it would have scared me if it was my first time, because I can't do that every day. Thanks, guys, for the worst skate of my life.
I'm exhausted, and even just once up and down the ice, I came out here and had to lay down in the track because it was just wearing me out.
If I was just a little guy, I want to play as small ice as possible.
There's too much time between the action. I think for kids with their attention spans, it makes it even more difficult because they lose interest if they're not involved in the play.
Anybody with experience for the first time would not be able to pick up the style of play, how to be in position. It would be way too difficult. There's way too much area to cover.
It's a little less thrilling, a little less exciting, just the way you play out here. It's nothing like that you play in real life.
The surface is way too big to learn that.
So a couple of interesting things about that video. None of that was scripted at all. All right, I mean, it was edited down from hundreds and hundreds of comments, but it was at our pond hockey championships in Wisconsin a number of years ago. The length and the width of the rink was based on taking the average size of a National Hockey League player at that time and the average size of an American eight-year-old. And then they sized the rink in proportion to that. We didn't tell anybody we were doing it. We had the nets made, which we still have in a warehouse somewhere. Anybody interested in using them? And then we had them clear off this huge space, had the trucks come out and put the nets, and we literally just waited. And as teams were playing games and doing things, all of a sudden they started wandering over and started having conversations based, oh, go ahead and play and everything. And then we interviewed them all afterwards. And, you know, like kids, it turned into a game. Like, we didn't set up games. Next thing you know, there are two teams there and they're playing. And so that's the liberal arts version. For those of you, I'm a liberal arts major. That's a liberal arts version of why it's important, right? For me, that makes total sense. But in Michigan, we also have a lot of engineers because of the big three. So in a couple of slides, I'm going to show you what I call the engineering version of the same thing, or the same thing. But the other thing about the American development model is trying to get our coaches to understand that development is what happens every day. All right? Having a plan that isn't executed doesn't help our kids. Oh, we're going to do that. Oh, we're going to do that. It's like being a coach and saying, every Monday is skill development day. Every first 20 minutes of every practice, we're going to do skill development. And then you lose on Saturday. And you show up on Monday and you do breakouts. Because your breakout was bad, right? And you don't realize the reason your breakout was bad is you can't pass, you can't skate, you can't open up, and the kids certainly can't catch a pass, but we're going to practice breakouts, right? So now your plan, that development plan, goes out the window. So when we talk about having a development plan and having it happen every day, we also talk to our coaches about sticking with it. Now, why is that important for a group like this? Because often the development plan is hampered by our association's ice plan. Often the development plan and the direction of coaches is hampered by old ice schedules that reflect the way it's always been done. So we not only have to get our coaches out of that mind, not only our presidents and our vice presidents and our directors of hockey, but we have to get everybody on board to be open to what is needed to go down this different path. Because if you all of a sudden You have 10 coaches who all want to share ice and double their ice time and cut costs. And it doesn't matter how much ice you actually have, right? It matters how you use it. But the ice schedule is saying, no, you get this and you get this and you get this. All of a sudden, we've taken away that vehicle for us to do the right things, right? The next step is getting coaches to understand, well, I have all this ice, so I might as well do this. No, you might as well not do that. That's not what's good, right? But if we all work together, it's much easier to solve this problem. And then, hopefully you read this, I'm not going to read it behind me, but this is critical to getting the right thing done. It's recognizing and educating or informing the parents that it's about the kid. It's not what they believe is right, the aesthetics of it, but it's also about them understanding it's about what's right for the kids. And now if you start taking in associations, coaches, or private entities, we have a lot in the United States, coaches who run teams for pay, right? And it's about aggregating the best talent. It's recruiting, not about developing. And what is important is that they go to a tournament every other week, because more tournaments they go to, the more money they make. The more tournaments they go to, the more trophies they may win. And the more trophies they win, it's their pipeline to get kids down the road. Right? Well, it's all flies in the face of what we have to do for development. So as we look to make these changes, we have to recognize where are the issues in our association, our organization, and each one is different. So another part of the rollout was not just changing the environment of games and doing the wrong things and having kids retire at 6 because they won meaningless tournaments, but also how do we make the players better in practice? And one of the most important things, of course, that we researched was the idea of using station-based practices in order to increase not just the number of repetitions, but to give a better teacher-student ratio, a better coach-player ratio. And what was interesting is this Hockey Canada statement got to be at least 10 years old, maybe 15, when they rolled that out. This is a Finnish Hockey Federation statement that, again, at least 10 years old. But none of these things were acted on. So one of the most important tenets of what we're doing now is putting kids not only in the right game environment, 6 under, 8 and under cross ice, right, but also in the right practice environment. Where we share ice. At 8 and under, we're looking at 48 to 60 kids on the ice. The understanding that, and the gentleman who asked about roster size, that was such a great question, because we tend to think roster size and team size dictates what happens on the ice. And it doesn't. So in our biggest associations, these 48 kids could be 5 8 and under teams. And depending on our association, they could be 5 8 and under teams that are equally drafted, or 5 8 and under teams because about where they live and the leagues they perform in have an A, B, C, D, E, and F, or what we break them up into thirds, red, white, and blue teams. All right, so red's the top third of players, white's the middle third, and blue's the bottom third. All those players are on the ice together. But the important thing in order for every player to improve is that they're grouped by likability. So even if you have 5 teams that are equally balanced, when it comes time to practicing, the red players from each of those 5 teams are in one group or in 2 groups. And then the white players are in 2 groups, and the blue players are in 2 groups. And this is a really important part of our development philosophy and practice, because kids don't get better chasing kids who have the puck, right? It's like Barcelona football. Their development plan is simple. Time on the ball, time on the ball, time on the ball. That's it. Here you go, kid. Here's a ball. Take it with you everywhere, right? In hockey, it's like that. We want time on the ice, we want touches, we want time on the puck. It's like, it drives me nuts when I go to a practice and I have coaches on the ice with all these little kids. The coach has the puck, he's skating around the ice and the little kids are chasing him. The first thing I do is come here. You chase the kid with the puck, right? That's development, not the kid. So we have this misinformation, especially with parents. My kid has to play with better kids in order for him to get better, which is actually not true at all. Your kid has to have time on the ice and time at the puck at the youngest ages to get better. Kids who chase other kids don't get better, right? So this grouping by likability is really, really important to our practice philosophy, and not just at 6 and 8, but at 10, at 12. Last year I coached 14U AAA hockey, and we would do station-based practices all the time, and unbeknownst to my kids, I spent a lot of time making sure the kids were in the right stations with the right kids, because it was still important at 14U. It's still important now at 16U. So we look at practice differently. That's our typical practice structure. I know you guys got hundreds of things on the Hockey Canada website. So do we at USA Hockey. In fact, we have a year's worth of 8 and under plans that are broken down into 6 station practice plans, complete with teaching points. And you just open it up, hit print, and there's your practice plan. You can email it to your other coaches so you're not spending a lot of time. The dirty little secret about the ADM, when we launched this, everybody had all these complaints about what we were doing, and nobody hit what really is the biggest complaint or the biggest problem we have. And that is, we're asking our volunteer coaches to do more than we've ever asked them before. That's the biggest thing. Well, everything that everybody else is pointing to, that had nothing to do with it. The biggest problem we had in our launch was getting the information out to all our coaches and making their job easier. So he's not hiding in his cubicle from his boss trying to draw up a good practice, or worse yet, showing up with no plan. So we had to make it easy for our coaches to have plans and be able to deliver them. So this is what it used to look like.
Aren't we lucky to have the whole ice tonight?
It's a Division I assistant college hockey coach. I watched this, I'm not sure what I'm more upset about. The fact that those coaches convinced their parents they needed the sheet, that was extra and above what they did, or the fact that those coaches stood there and talked to each other the whole time. This is 65, 9 and 10-year-old, 8, 9, and 10-year-olds at Air Force Academy. We had 11 coaches on the ice, 6 different stations. We went for 60 minutes. That's what we're looking to reproduce all over the United States. And the beautiful thing, and I'm sure nobody follows me on Twitter, which I'm not telling you to or asking you to, but one of the things I just a couple of weeks ago had out was you can now walk into just random rinks in the United States on a Saturday morning, and that's what you see. And 10 years ago, you saw that first part, right? So it's changing for us. And again, you'll see numbers. So now let's talk a little bit directly about 6 and under and 8 and under. I believe, well, first of all, you should know this. USA Hockey believes we should be playing half ice till 10. All right? We should be using blue pucks till 10. But we didn't launch the American development model that way, and there's a very simple reason why. We were afraid people would come and burn our houses down. Okay? And we couldn't do that, okay? We believe it's right. In fact, our best coaches, our smart coaches, they find ways to take the full ice environment at 9U and 10U and only schedule 30 games that way, and everything else they do at half ice. Our entire state of Washington now has half ice hockey at 10U. Half of St. Louis has half ice hockey of 10U. Well, St. Louis had what, 4 first rounders? In the last draft, 7 or something like that over the first 2 rounds in the last 2 drafts. I mean, that's huge. I was talking to John or Jason, I'm not sure who I was talking to earlier. We had the conversation. California now has more registered youth hockey players than Michigan. And it's been easier for us to make changes in California and Missouri and places like that than it is in Michigan. Because Michigan thinks hockey has cultural significance. Okay, they don't. They need to come up here, right? This is where hockey has cultural significance. Okay, I get it, all right? But people in Michigan think hockey is culturally significant there. It's not, all right? But we had a lot harder time convincing people in Michigan to go this direction than we did people in LA. And now LA has more players than Michigan. There's reasons for that. So at the youngest ages, it's really important that we make a difference between scrimmages and games. Because at 6 and 8, scrimmaging is important. Games that don't have a scoreboard and all that, just in practice. Every practice should have that. In fact, let's be honest, okay? The best practice possible for 8 and under kids would be 100 pucks, 6 nets, 60 kids, and we all go upstairs and have coffee. That'd be a great 8 and under practice. They'd probably get more out of that than most 8 and under practices all around North America, because they'd play, right? So when we have this designated ice and we have practice slots and we're doing things, we try to get our coaches to go in that station-based environment, and we try to have them scrimmage often. That's how kids at 8 and under learned. They learn by playing, right? So we have them play. But where we had a real trouble, and one of the most important things there were a few things in my mind that I really wanted to say. To us, this was a turning point when we realized we had to make games important. Because games are important. Games are important, right? That was another thing USA Hockey people threw stones at us when we launched the ADM. Oh, you guys don't want us to win. Yeah, we do. We just want you to win the right way, right? We all know how you win at 12 and under, right? Does everybody know how you win at 12, right? If I tell you, I don't care, it's Canada. I'm going to tell you how to win. I'm kidding, that was a joke. I'll tell you, right? We all know how to win at 12 and under. All right, here's what you do. The puck is in your zone. You don't let anybody handle it. They have to rim it around as hard as they can. Or if they can lift it, they get it off the boards or off the glass and out into the neutral zone. Once it's in the neutral zone, they are allowed to touch the puck till the red line. And then it must go in deep. Only one player can forecheck on the puck. The other 2 players have to go down the walls and stop at the hash marks because the other team's going to throw it there eventually. Right? Right? You're going to win a lot of games at 12 and under. You're going to win a lot of games at 12 and under. You know why? Because 12-year-old kids make a lot of mistakes. So if you completely limit all your mistakes and let the other team make mistakes, you're going to win a lot of games. The difference, of course, is at the end of the year, your players are going to suck. They are. If you don't practice them the right way, you don't let them make decisions, you don't let them learn about awareness, right? You don't start teaching them concepts of the game, not systems, but concepts starting at 9. You just tell them what to do like you're playing stick hockey. They will not get any better. Oh, they might be hockey school better. We went through that phase in the United States. Man, you walk on a rink and you're like, holy jeez, you got on the rink. Kids are going around, they're shooting and they're skating and they're handling the puck. And I get on the ice because I go around to all these different associations and say, oh man, this is great. These kids, they got some talent out here. Then I put the first game, activity, first small area game, first decision thing. They have a decision they have to make on the ice, and they can't do it. And then I realized, they're not that good. Yeah, they all look great at hockey school. They could all skate. They could all handle the puck. They all shoot the puck a ton. They just can't think, right? So we have to do the right things for our kids. It's just like, if I may, because now that I use the word suck, and I think Steve did this morning, I can use it again. One of the most important things, and you guys, I got you captured for an hour. At our coaching clinics, I always joke with our coaches. We're very proud of our coaching program, as is Canada, and rightfully so. We're very proud of our coaching program. And it's the old Saturday morning, hey, I'm so excited you're all here. Thank you for coming. Yeah, I know you have to be here. We make you, right? I mean, I get all that and everything, but I tell our coaches all the time, you have to take a level 1, 2, and 3 consecutively in 3 years. You have to do safe sport training because nothing is more important than the safety of our children, right? That's first. Coaching education is second in my mind, all right? You have to do 3 clinics in 3 years, and you have to do a 6.5-hour module online for each level you coach, 8 and under, 10, 12, 14, 16, right? And people moan and complain and they hate it and everything else. And my comment is very simple, and I'll share it with you right now. Just because you're a volunteer, it doesn't give you a right to suck at what you do. That's simple it. That's it, right? I tell the coaches all the time, I'm not telling you people this. You write letters to USA Hockey. He told us not to suck. No. This is what I tell my coaches in the US. I don't care if they write letters. I'm not saying you guys. What I'm saying is, this is why we're moving our coaches in that direction. We tell them, you don't ruin our sport. If you don't want to go to training, go coach soccer. Ruin their sport, right? Don't ruin our sport, okay? And when I say ours down in the States, I mean yours. So we have to create, so you have all those scrimmages, but one of the things we learned is games are important and you have to make them special. So just because kids are 8 years old and they're playing cross ice or half ice, you have to find a way to get boards, right? You got to find a way to put up boards like this. You got to get score clocks. These electrical score clocks are about $389. You can hang them up. They're about the size of this picture, maybe a little bigger. They can hang up almost anywhere in the rink. All right? Or like this, these are less than $100. They can go in the penalty box, and you can have one of the parents drinking Tim Hortons turning the score when there's score. All right? Have music, because big kids have music. Right? Invite grandma and grandpa, because it's a game. But as soon as it becomes to the parents, oh yeah, you got one of those cross ice games today, you got no chance. You got no chance. Because you're with them a couple of hours a week, they're with them 24 hours a day at home. So making game day important is a key to having this be successful and having parents and everybody buy in. It's one of the biggest lessons we learned. There shouldn't be a ton of game days, but when they are, they should be important. Our jamborees in the US, especially in Michigan, when we have multi-association jamborees, we now have 2-day jamborees. Do I like it? Yeah, whatever, right? But you know what? The kids get to stay in a hotel. The parents get to drink, which is a big part of youth hockey. And the kids play. The kids play how many games? 6, 8 games of cross ice hockey. As long as they're playing the right way, I don't care if I want them to be in the pool all day, right? As long as they're playing the right way, parents, whatever's going, that's fine. And now jamborees are like tournaments. You got guys with pictures, and you got them selling stuff and painting faces and stuff. There's a reason for our kids. It's special, right? They'll get to the other stuff soon enough. So game day implementation is important. Oh, here we go. This is for engineers.
Analytics, statistics behind the game. We're really looking at ways to drill down in our sport and statistically measure all the things that are happening so that we have a better understanding of really how the sport is played.
Right, Joe Serena, only Detroit Red Wings. And we were lucky to have Little Caesars provide their 8 new white team. And what we did is we put them through an exercise of cross-ice hockey, half-ice hockey, and full-ice hockey.
The kids will be wearing the same technology and being tracked as similar to National Hockey League tracks the NHL players. And it's in terms of puck touches, shift lengths, and really the exercise today is to show what the right sizing of the rink means with those metrics.
Each player has a unique ID number on their RFID sticker, so we know who's coming on the ice, who's coming off the ice instantly. This is the first time that we actually are using our technology in an amateur game, so this is kind of exciting.
Well, the cross ice game, what I saw was a lot of body contact.
It's not as big and you have to work in more tight spaces. And it's a little bit harder because everybody gets on you quicker. So in the cross ice game, I stick handle through people and I shot top shelf and score. I got to touch the puck more and cross ice.
And the half-ice game, what I was amazed about was the puck control, which allowed them to make short 5-foot puck support passes. When you open it up to the large sheet, to the full ice game, what you see really is one-on-one hockey. Yeah, basically it's one move, it's one bounce of the puck, and then it's a full ice breakaway.
I didn't score in full ice because I wasn't passing the puck and they didn't pass either. Well, full ice, you don't get to touch the puck anymore unless you're playing not a that good skilled team. Cross ice, you get to touch the puck more no matter what, and have lots of good scoring chances. On full ice, you don't get that many scoring chances.
What we're able to prove in a setting like this is that the statistics behind the game for cross-ice hockey are a lot closer to what the NHL is than the full ice game at 800.
As I'm sitting here watching my child play, I don't know how many times he's touched the puck. I don't have a stopwatch. I don't know what he's doing. I'm hoping he's having fun and learning and building skill. But to know that for a fact, it's reassuring.
Advanced players benefit the most. That's such a key thing to what we're going to talk about here.
I think it's terrific. Anytime we can make decisions that are based on data, that have fact behind it, I think it's fantastic.
These numbers show what's good for a child. Now I think it's up to us to take a step back and say we're willing to institute programs that help kids fulfill their potential. I think that's who USA Hockey is. I think that's what we should be.
That was the engineer there at the end. Not me, the guy before me. So, right, you got to have a plan, right? And you have to understand the struggle between theory and practical reality. All right, so the first and most important thing we learned is make sure you know the landscape. And we made a lot of mistakes, and the landscape in certain areas was not what we thought it was. And we had some very painful lessons because we underestimated the power of people with money, and we underestimated the passion of parents who have no idea what's good for their children, but will tell you what's good for them anyway, right? The average parent in the United States spends more time interviewing and finding out who are the people that are going to remodel their kitchen than we do with the association we're bringing our youth to. That's an issue. We found that in some areas, our rules held us back, right? We wanted, for whatever it was, the definition of a game. Like, you know, I think we had a conversation at breakfast today about, Cosmo was talking about too many rules, right? Well, every time I see a rule, it means somebody tried to do an end around about what was right, so they had to put a rule in. Now we had these rules, and we realized some of these rules prohibited us from doing the right thing, right? The number of games needed for you to be eligible for districts. Well, all of a sudden, teams had to play all these games just to be eligible for districts, and they didn't start until January. And now, as Steve said, teams are done by February, but also not just done. You're forcing coaches to have games because they want to play in districts. Now they can't have practices, right? I mean, it was all kinds of things, so that's important. The compromise. So we knew this was right. 10 and under. We would have done it probably half ice because the rinks in Europe are 100 by 200, so we would have probably done half ice at 10U, cross ice at 8U. But we didn't want to tell anybody that. So when we launched this, people said, well, let's just do it at 6U. We had built in the compromise before we launched it, and we took that argument out of our way. In truth, we should be doing it to 10U We've already compromised to go to 8U. And that was a big issue for us. And then the Chelsea experiment is, I was pretty hardline. I wanted to rip the Band-Aid off, and I wanted you to have to do it right now. And I still stand by that. Okay? Doing it in progression or progression by skill, I believe is the wrong thing, and I'll touch on that in a second. But the Chelsea experiment was a good friend of mine who runs a hockey association just outside of Ann Arbor. And I was like, we need to make everybody play cross or half ice. And he said, Bob, we should let him play full ice till December. And then we should have a big tournament jamboree where they play half ice. Because the parents will get hit over the head. Because they'll realize when they see this next to that, just how bad that is. Right? And in a way, he was right. Right? Now, the guys and the gals who are just so passionate they're not going to list arguments, that's never going to change anyway. But if we could go back and for the first few months have people come to the rink and play one game of full ice for 10 minutes and then go like we did at Joe Louis and then go to cross, you know, anybody with any common sense at all would get hit over the head with it, right? Change starts at the bottom but driven from the top. We wanted to start at the bottom and then move upwards in terms of acceptance. What we should have done, well, we should have done one of two things. Here's what Hockey Canada should have done with Toronto, too. This is the second thing. First thing is we should have done one of two things. The first thing is we should have just went to the AAA associations and said, all right, we're going to launch this new high-performance model. Don't tell them. Just you guys, okay? This is what it does. Here's how we're going to do it. And get the AAA associations to buy in. Because what does every kid and every parent look to? What are the AAA kids doing? And if we would have launched it there, everybody else would have fell in. The second thing, what we could have done, and here's what my suggestion for Toronto, a little too late, Corey, I know, but I would have launched it and just told Toronto, hey, we're launching this high-performance development model for everybody in Canada. You guys can't do it. Oh my God, they would have been all over that. What do you mean we can't do it? We gotta do it, right? And I use Toronto as an example, and you know, obviously I'm making light of it. But we look back, we had a couple of really tough markets. Chicago was a tough market for us. Detroit was a tough market. Boston was a tough market. And we often think about, we should have just told them they couldn't do it, you know, and maybe not, but. Remember this, competition structure always dictates development, so you got to find a way around that. So I was talking about ice scheduling and game count and practice to game ratio. Stakeholders don't always do what's best for our athletes or development. We have a lot of people making money on hockey, right? In Chicago, if you play 8 and under hockey in Chicago, it's costing you between $4,000 and $4,500, okay? We have a pay-to-play environment in Chicago where almost every association has a hockey director. They're making between $85 and $150. Where are they getting that money? From $4,500 programs in mites. So why are we having such a hard problem in Chicago getting them to play cross ice? Not because the directors don't believe in it, not because they don't think it's good. They can't figure out how to charge the parents $4,500 to have them play half ice, right? That really, I mean, that's what it is, right? Follow the money. Follow the money. So privately, they're saying, oh, we're doing all your practices. We're playing small areas in all the practices. We're playing cross ice in practices. We play cross ice in our association. But no, we got to play full ice in games, you know, when they go outside the association. So you got to really know what the key stakeholders are looking at. The other key stakeholder is the rinks, right? Some of our rink owners are like, oh my God, you're going to put 60 kids on the ice instead of 15? I'm going to lose money. The smart rink owner said, you're going to put 60 kids on an hour? And if I lower their cost by 15%, I'm going to make 3 times as much money. Yeah, and the kids are paying less money, right? So We did not do a good job of involving that stakeholder, the rink owners. And in fact, now 9 years later, we're launching a program where we're now having to go back and relaunch this with our rink owners because they're really that important. And facts don't win the argument, emotions do, right? We've talked about these throughout. One of the biggest things here, start at youngest age and work up, right? If a progression works, it has to be a hard progression because there's always another parent who says it's good for everybody else but not their kid. So if you start at 6 and under now, and then next year it's 7 or 8, and then the year after it's 8, right? That's fantastic, but you got to have the implementation plan to follow through with that. I will tell you what I believe, and I'm not here to tell you what does and doesn't work for you. I will tell you what I believe does not work, because we've had experience with this, is you saw the stats about how important it is for your best players. We in the United States want our very best players to play cross and small ice hockey, all right? And a lot of places in the US decided they were going to launch it by, oh, we're having those rec kids do it. We'll have the house kids do it. We'll have those kids do it. Well, then what's happened in that place, instead of it becoming a progression of those kids to the next kids, it's become, oh, this cross ice hockey is great for those recreational kids, right? And we're losing the opportunity to have the best players do what's right. So we're missing development opportunities with what is our best, I hate to say this at that age, but our best athletes at that age, or at least the kids who are showing a little bit of I don't know, like to the sport, passion for the sport, whatever. All right, so that is a really important thing. This using elite players coaching to deliver the message. You saw the Austin Matthews quote about he played cross ice and can't understand why it took so long for it to be accepted, right? But understand, for every quote like that for Austin Matthews, there's somebody somewhere who says, well, what the hell does he know? Yeah, you can laugh at that, but it's true. Ann Arbor Youth Hockey Association, 650 kids, one of the biggest in the state of Michigan. Mark Kelly, who's the chief scout for the Chicago Blackhawks, has 2 kids in that association. This is going back about 7, 8 years now. So Mark calls me up because we worked together at one time and says, Bob, they're asking me to come in and talk about this cross-ice hockey, and I love it. My kids love it. It's fantastic. But send me a couple of the key things I have to talk about. All right. So he goes to the board meeting. Board meeting was packed. He tells me the story. It was fantastic. He walks in and they introduce Mark Kelly, the chief scout. Oh, by the way, his dad was Jack Kelly. I don't know if you remember that name. He coached college hockey forever. I think he coached the Boston Bruins back in the 50s or whatever it was, right? This isn't not a hockey family, okay? Oh, and his brother's David Kelly, which, you know, he's the TV guy. The biggest thing about him is he's married to... it's a better story if I can remember who she is. The one who played in, it'll come to me. Anyway, she's beautiful. But I'm sorry, that's all the time I have. No, so Mark goes into this meeting. Where can I have 5 more minutes? Is that okay? Thank you. So Mark goes into this meeting, and they introduce him, and, you know, longtime scout, now the chief scout, and they won this thing, you know, whatever. And he goes in and he starts telling them all the good stuff. And when he was all done, some father in the back of the room said, what the hell do you know? like right out loud. Like, this guy never played hockey in his life, right? Didn't know. So every time we used an elite player or a coach to deliver messaging, while the message got out and it was good for some, there's always somebody willing to stand up and say, what the hell do you know? So we have to be a little bit careful of that. Include all stakeholders. What's that?
Michelle Pfeiffer.
That's it. Thank you, Michelle Pfeiffer. Yeah. And every time I say to Mark, I say, what are you doing for Christmas? Maybe you and I should spend Christmas together. And he hasn't gone for it in the last 15 years. I don't think it's changing this year. But anyway, so our view after 8 years, we're going into our 9th year, is the big thing is, you know, we see our mistakes and we're going to make them, continue to make them. you know, we all make them, but you have to push on and find ways then to overcome and right the ship. Continued education never ends. This was something we thought about, but we didn't realize how important it was. That is your new players coming in. So it's new players and new parents, and it's generational. Like, it's not going to be for us another 10 years before the kids of cross-ice parents are starting high. Well, it'll be more than that. It'll be 15, 20 years, right, when the kids start. So, you know, that battle never ends. It changes a bit, and now it's not really as much of a battle as just going in and say, hey, this is what we do, this is why we do it, and parents who knew the game say, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. You know, a little bit. And again, we go back to cultural significance, but progression works to a point. I talked to that. And it's not about hockey, it's about change. If we were to change one thing about what we did, is we should have went out and hired a big time company who deals with change. Not the one that changed Coke, because I think that was a disaster, right? But a different company. Hire a company, marketing, PR, corporate company that would have taught us how to deliver change. Because all the common sense, all the theories, all the facts, the fact that it just made sense to hockey people, at the end of the day, that really is not anything that helped drive the argument at all. So here's where we're at. And if you look at what Dr. Nora said this morning about how important it is to bring kids at the younger levels, that's our numbers. We launched in 2009, all right? Or when I got hired, we got hired was in 2009, which is a great story. Kenny Martell hired 7 of us. We were all gung-ho. We got all this information. We're ready. We got to Colorado Springs. We sat in the office, and he literally started the meeting and said, okay, what should we do now? Like, you know, that would have been a good time to hire the company. But that's a big number. Hey, that's a big number. 3rd year, over 100,000 registered players at 8U. We never had that before until 3 years ago. We've had growth in every age category. For years, our only growth was women and adults. Now we're having growth in every age category. Talked about retention. In the period when most kids are leaving, our retention last year was 91.2%. At that critical age group. And we're beginning now to see the improvement of the early adapters. Our national team program in Plymouth, the coaches are saying that, or the scouts are saying they have more players than ever to choose to come to that national team tryout. The coaches are saying the players at that national team tryout seem to have more hockey sense, better awareness than they have in the past. Though that's huge. For us. And I'm going to leave you with a 3-minute video.
Ladies and gentlemen, at TED we talk a lot about leadership and how to make a movement. So let's watch a movement happen, start to finish, in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons from it. First, of course, you know, a leader needs the guts to stand out and be ridiculed. But what he's doing is so easy to follow. So here's his first follower with a crucial role. He's going to show everyone else how to follow. Now notice that the leader embraces him as an equal. So now it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Now there he is calling to his friends. Now if you notice that the first follower is actually an underestimated form of leadership in itself. It takes guts to stand out like that. The first follower is what transforms a lone nut into a leader. And here comes the second follower. Now it's not a lone nut, it's not 2 nuts, 3 is a crowd, and the crowd is news. So a movement must be public. It's important to show not just the leader, but the followers, because you find that new followers emulate the followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, and immediately after, 3 more people. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point. Now we've got a movement. So, notice that as more people join in, it's less risky. So those that were sitting on the fence before now have no reason not to. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, but they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. So, over the next next minute, you'll see all of the those that prefer to stick with the crowd, because eventually they would be ridiculed for not joining in. And that's how you make a movement. But let's recap some lessons from this. So first, if you are the type, like the shirtless dancing guy, that is standing alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals. So it's clearly about the movement, not you. Okay, but we might have missed the real lesson here. The biggest lesson, if you noticed, did you catch it? Is that leadership is over-glorified. That yes, it was the shirtless guy was first, and he'll get all the credit, but it was really the first follower that transformed the lone nut into a leader. So as we're told that we should all be leaders, that would be really ineffective. If you really care about starting a movement, have the courage to follow and show others how to follow. And when you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first one to stand up and join in. And what a perfect place to do that, Ted. Thanks.
So I really, I've gone over, so no questions? No questions. Getting the hook, which is fine. No, I get that. But I do want to say thank you so much, and I appreciate so much that you having me here. That is my email. If there's anything I can do or any way I can be any help, please feel free to email me. You know, as your neighbors to the south, we very much appreciate what happens and is happening here at Hockey Canada, because it's a global sport, and I think we're all trying to make it better. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for having me.